the two sides of this, trying to make a decision on what we should do as a country. And I think we all need to raise our voices that this is important for us to stay in this agreement. If the United States, the largest emitter in world history, the amount of carbon that's up there in the atmosphere warming us up, 25% of that is from us. And we're only about 4% of the world's population. So while the Heritage Foundation and the Trump administration might say only 0.2 degrees will be shaven off of the amount of warming if the United States shuts off all the fossil fuels right now. Well, that's not how it works, right? The world's countries only will act if they act together. They need to have leadership from the United States. So, all right, it's not happening in Washington. We should, of course, be contacting our congressional delegation, but we also need to act locally. So that's what this is kind of all about, that in the United States, we can do things locally. We have this wonderful laboratories of democracy, and Rhode Island is like a scale model of a state, is what I've been calling it since I came here 8 years ago. And so I really love bringing my students down to the State House, and they are amazing people who come up with great ideas. In 2010, we wrote and passed a bill called the Climate Risk Reduction Act of 2010. And that was just to get the states started thinking about climate risks. And there was a commission created, which the Rhode Island Climate Change Commission. And then in 2014, we worked with a large group of environmental organizations and with the governor's office, and helped draft the Resilient Rhode Island Act, which had two parts. I talk about sort of anybody have a dog and you have to give them medicine, right? So the cream cheese on the outside was the sort of resiliency and adaptation, thinking about how we're going to deal with the impacts of climate change, which people are already seeing and are willing to do, right? And then on the medicine on the inside was these emissions reduction targets of 80% by 2050, which indeed, Larry, I think that was you who said that's where we want to get. So that was a big achievement, and it set up the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council of agency heads. That council has been slow in getting started. It's trying, but it really needs some oomph from civil society, right? As Ken Payne, who's across the room, one of our luminaries in the state, said, the government doesn't act by itself. It needs really civil society to push to make things happen. So we all need to bring our ideas and our energy and our pressure to the Executive Climate Change Coordinating Council, the EC4. Now, the Resilient Rhode Island Act was based on science from a long time ago. That 80% goal isn't good enough anymore by 2050. We're already at 410 parts per million of carbon dioxide. The temperature's already risen over 1 degree Celsius. We're at the very top of all the models is what's actually happening. So what science is saying, the science that I've been able to keep up on, it says that we need to probably get to zero emissions net by 2035. So that's 100% renewables. And this group here is, in the position really to help us get there, right? They're helping with the legislation, they have the big picture, and then they have the way that we can just individually make this difference right now. So later I can talk about the Energize Rhode Island Act, which is carbon pricing bill, which we've been working on, and People's Power and Light has been really important in moving that forward. So I would just, I'm using up my 2 minutes, and we'll just say one last point is that we had a really important, the last bit of the Resilient Rhode Island Act was that there would be a study conducted on how the state could meet those targets of 80% emissions reductions by 2050. And Danny Musher, who's here from the Office of Energy Resources, is around here somewhere. Danny led on that and worked with a bunch of great consultants who came up with this really interesting plan. It had a lot of information that was extremely helpful. But it wasn't really actually a plan. It doesn't really tell us how we're going to get there. It really lacks sort of the social and the political and the economic steps that we can take and the policy tools at the economy-wide level. So that's our job now, is to make that happen and to get us to 100% renewables by 2035. Thanks.
Thank you.